School of the Oryxes. EKOORISAFROCENTIFRATIEGOGYNTEGFRICANDEVLACK 21st CENTURIFRICANERISANCE. Work carried out in compliance with Law 10639/03 Afro-Brazilian and African Culture in Education. Ivan Polly Ozenfemi Levovan. Pedagogy of the Oryxes, Echo R. Ivan da Silva Poli Ozenfemi Levovan. I dedicate this work to my late spiritual brother Ivan D. Levovan, who was in Brazil between February and May 2015, my brother from the diaspora who initiated me in the study of the cult of Ife in his quality as a Babalawo and son of the Arab of Azagbo in Nigeria, spiritual leader, head of the Balala SFAME Levovan, my dad spiritual. I dedicated his constructions also at leaders traditional Rebirth African, as mine dad Ifeami Levovan and Prince Serge Uzo, heir to the throne of Dahomey, who recognized me, so like mine work, like member and part of this rebirth. I cannot fail to mention in this dedication my thanks to Mother Stella Diochosi, Odkeod, Maria Stella in Azevedo Saints, 1925-2018, so as at your precursors matriarchs of the Ilaxapafonj, Adi, Emianina, Ugnia Ana dos Santos, 1869-1938, Oxamove, Mother Senhora, Maria Viviana, do Espírito Santo, 1890-1967, Aniuntan, Mother Amazinha, Andina Valeria Pimentel, 1916-1975, all with their histories of true heroines in the defense of our traditional communities of African origin, as well as the values civilizing what one nation inherited from these traditions. Reflections theoretical. In Bourdieux The Charlot, reflecting on the sociology gives reproduction. For start it is reflection. I seek support about everything us studies, performed per Pierre Bourdieu, on the theories of reproduction and symbolic violence, in addition to the studies of Bernard Laher, described in Success School in the media popular at Reasons of Unlikely. Second Bourdieu on Passaran, 1992, T19, at Constructions The Reproduction, All Power in Violence Symbolic, which manages to impose meanings and make them legitimate, disguising the relations of force, what are in your base, as your own force. Symbolic of these relations. It is understood that symbolic violence occurs when the culture of the ruling class is imposed as a hegemonic culture and legitimizes itself, overlapping other cultures. This fact occurs about everything at institution school through gives action pedagogical while imposition in an arbitrary cultural. Pedagogical action it is. A symbolic violence, in the first sense, while power relations between the constitutive groups or classes of a social formation are at the base of power arbitrary, what it is the condition in establishment in one relationship, in communication pedagogical. Gives imposition and inculcation of a cultural arbitrary, according to an arbitrary mode of imposition and inculcation, education. The pedagogical action is a violence symbolic, in a second sense, insofar as the delimitation implied in the fact of impose and inculcate certain meanings, agreed by selection and exclusion, worthy of being reproduced by a pedagogical action, reproduces the arbitrary selection that a group or a class operates subjectively in and through its cultural arbitrariness. The degree arbitrary objective of the power to impose a pedagogical action is all the more high as the degree of arbitrariness of the imposed culture is itself higher. Bourdieu, Passeron, 1992, p. 22, 24. According to the authors, this action of inculcating the cultural arbitrary is legitimized through the pedagogical authority, to which he refers as follows. The pedagogical action implies necessarily, as a social condition of exercise, pedagogical authority, an autonomy relative to the body in charge of exercising it. Bourdieu, Passeron, 1992, p. 26. Emphasis in the authors. In the same work, Bourdieu and Passeron state that the pedagogical work makes this inculcation in arbitrary, cultural, legitimized for the authority pedagogical behavior it is made prolonged for in addition, gives action pedagogical through a job, termed specifically for it is, inculcation, what surpasses O environment school. How much to this, you authors say, as an arbitrary imposition of a cultural arbitrary that presupposes the authority pedagogical, that is, a delegation of authority, which implies that the instance pedagogical practice reproduces the principles of cultural arbitrariness imposed by a group or a class as worthy of being reproduced, both by its existence and by delegating the one instance the authority indispensable for play it. The action pedagogical implies O pedagogical work as a work of inculcation that must last long enough to produce a durable formation, that is, a habitus as a product of the internalization of principles of the cultural arbitrary capable of perpetuating itself after the cessation of action pedagogical, and, therefore, to perpetuate in practices the principles of internalized arbitrariness. The Oudieuk, Passeron, 1992, p. 44, italics the authors. Of that shape, the authors put, in the next step, O argument, from what all system in teaching operates from the pedagogical action, which has the function of inculcating a cultural arbitrariness, legitimized by pedagogical authority and perpetuated by pedagogical work, and it is the space that makes so that this system, if it exists, is an agent of cultural reproduction. And in turn, it becomes responsible, by reproduction of structures social in force in one society determined. Let's see what you authors say. Every institutionalized education system owes the specific characteristics of your structure and in your operation to fact in what in it is need to produce and reproduce, by the institution's own means, the institutional conditions whose existence and persistence, self-reproduction of the institution, are necessary both for the exercise of its function of inculcating regarding the realization of its function of reproduction of the cultural arbitrary of which it is not the producer, cultural reproduction, and whose reproduction contributes to the reproduction of relations between groups or classes, social reproduction. The Oudieuk, Passeron, 1992, p. 64, emphasis in authors. In summary, the authors explain that this inculcation of cultural arbitrariness occurs through the pedagogical action, legitimized, in turn, by the pedagogical authority, which through the work pedagogy consolidates this inculcation. Thus, the education system becomes a space of cultural reproduction, which will result in the reproduction of the social relations in force in the society in question. In this way, order is maintained that benefits the members of the classes dominant in the process in cultural reproduction and social. From this perspective, which makes the school space a space for cultural and social reproduction of the central elements, it is the form of appropriation of language. The action pedagogical in inculcation of a certain cultural arbitrariness also takes place through the process of language appropriation that tries to impose the linguistic habitus of the culture of the intellectual class and, not infrequently, financially dominant. As Pierre Bourdieu, 1996, himself demonstrates in his work The Economy of Exchanges Languages, the cultured pattern of the language is always closer to the linguistic habitus of the class culturally dominant. This allows to be this one pattern that to be reproduced and taught at the environment school, knife with what you members of this class have any less odds in suffer school failure. Thus, the process of cultural reproduction, which makes the school institution its central, contributes to the reproduction of relationships and, consequently, of social structures in force and the maintenance of the order that benefits the culturally dominant class as the work The reproduction, the Oudieuk, Passeron, 1992. In this process of reproduction, the marginalization of the entire symbolic universe is evident and cultural characteristic of members of other cultures, other than the culturally dominant one that, according to Bourdieu, 1996, 2005, it is the only considered worthy in, to be reproduced and inculcated in your arbitrary cultural. Consequently, not only the symbolic universe, but also the linguistic habitus of these populations, are also marginalized. And the author does not point in his theory any possibility or alternative so that these habits can be used in some way for the reversal of this process. Bourdieu remains pessimistic about splits, or even the reversal of this frame. The Academy, as a rule, in most countries in which this author has great influence, especially in Latin America, reproduces the author's discourse and does not seek ways of reversal of this picture. Reaffirming Bourdieu's pessimism, he transforms this pessimism into sociological determinism and functions as an intellectual promoter and trainer of a system of I teach that form professionals for act in the process breeding cultural and social. There is a constant criticism of sociological determinism, especially among intellectuals of the existentialist line, such as Jean-Paul Sartre, MENDONA, 2017. This author wove criticism of aspects of the work of Pierre Bourdieu, who, in turn, was also criticized and questioned by several authors of the schools who questioned the theories of reproduction from 1980s, as are examples Charlot, 2000, and Laher, 1997. However, the validity of the author's discourse, in the sense of promoting these reproductions in our education systems. We cannot deny the usefulness of research, study and Bourdieu's reflection, which shows a reality that needs to be understood. The way the Jin react, with your speech previously defeatist, to transform pessimism in Bourdieu determinism, as the existentialists claimed, makes it appear that there are no alternatives for the reversal of the picture. And, not infrequently, it causes people to be ignored or not given relevance to other experiences of authors who tried to break with a process that makes the school a space of reproduction cultural and consequently social. In other words, it is undeniable that one cannot ignore the validity and legitimacy of the Bourdieu's discourse and research, but the central question lies in the way in which one reacts to this discourse, whether transforming the author's pessimism into sociological determinism or seeking alternatives. The reversal of this frame from reflections about it is thematic. We must to ask same, those ones, what if yield to determinism sociological and no, seek alternatives to reverse this situation. As researchers, what do they do in a public university that is supposed to be focused on improving public education? What is the usefulness of their research, since they do not serve to reverse this picture of cultural reproduction and social? Already what researches are financed, in your larger part, per resources public, no should benefit the restricted cultural and financial elite in their process of maintaining order through the inculcation of a cultural arbitrary. Arbitrary that, in this process, disadvantages the greatest part of the population, which is the one who actually pays taxes and needs public services in the area of education.